Welcome to the December 10th meeting of the Murfreesboro City Council. Vice Mayor Doug Young has our prayer and our pledge.
Would you please join me in a moment of silence? Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right turn. Yeah, that was a right turn on right instead of left.
We'll move into our consent agenda. Would I ask that item H be moved to new business? So we'll have that.
Is it B only?
What's that?
B only.
Yeah, just, excuse me, item H, B would be moved to other business.
Okay.
With that exception, I'll move for passage of the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, will call the roll.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shackley.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We're moving to third readings and consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 15 OZ 58 to rezone an area located along Lytle Street to Planned Institutional Development PND District.
So moved. Second.
Motion is second.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shackley.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 15 OZ 62 to amend the conditions applicable to approximately 9.7 acres in Parcel E of the Victory Station Plan Unit Development PUD District located along Fortress Boulevard so as to allow an aged assistant care living facility.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shackley.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 15 OZ 59 to rezone an area located along Summit Court to duplex residential RD district.
Move for passage.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shackley.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Consider for passage on third and final reading ordinance 15 OZ 61 to rezone an area located along New Salem Highway to residential multifamily 16 RM 16 district.
Move for passage.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shackley.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We're moving to second readings and consider for amendment to the provisions of proposed ordinance 15057 regarding window signs, string lighting, and window frame lighting. Amendments are provided.
Mayor, Council, good evening. On the table before you is a copy of my memo that was emailed to you earlier this week. There are 4 different items that we would like to discuss. 2 of them are where staff is uncertain about what council's intent was when the ordinance was passed on first reading with the deletion of the references to string lighting. The copy of the ordinance that's attached to the memo that's in front of you has just the phrase string. Well, the phrase string lighting is deleted in places, and in where there was a section or a subsection that all it dealt with or talked about was string lighting, then that whole section was out. What I think would be the easiest and most sensible would be to take these one at a time, let you know what we have a question about, and see what your wishes are on that. The first item is string lighting. Now, when the phrase string lighting was taken out, that left in place a present prohibition against any string lighting in the city, with the exception of the period from November 15 to January 15. Now, this prohibition only operates in the commercial and industrial areas. It doesn't affect residences. We've never prohibited any kind of string lighting in residential districts. But as adopted on first reading, the prohibition of string lighting in commercial and industrial zones, except during the Christmas season from November 15th to January 15th, is prohibited. So with that, I guess I would, if that is to be council's intent, I would like to come back with an amended definition of string lighting to eliminate the content regulation of allowing Christmas lights as opposed to some other kind of light. And we would bring that to you if that is to be council's intent. So if I thought that I heard some expression that there was an expectation that by eliminating string lighting from this ordinance, that string lighting would be allowed everywhere, but that wouldn't be the case. So, and we need to just, I want to be clear about what council wishes on this.
Can I ask
Sure.
just a process question here as it relates to what we're dealing with right now? Do you need us, in what form will we come to an agreement on this? Are we going to have motions, and do we need, I mean, are we just nodding our heads and saying, yes, we're okay with that?
I think it should be more formal than that. I believe would be a formal, I guess, a motion on which way it would be, whether the string lighting would continue to be prohibited except during this period of time, or whether there's going to be some change. And if there's going to be some other allowance of string lighting, we probably will need to get some consensus of what it is that you want on that, and we'll bring that back to you before third reading.
I think I can solve one of these things pretty quickly, that if we end up having, and I'll make this in the form of a motion on the November 15th to January 15th item, that if in fact there is any use for us to have that time frame, that we would make a motion to amend the language to what you've suggested there. That if we have a November 15, that we would just be taking it to be dates instead of, I mean, that seems to me to be kind of the easy part of this.
Okay.
Does everybody does that make sense? That we're just taking the Christmas out and making it a date range?
So
that's what's happening, right?
That would be adopting the language that's the second
A11
embedded language in my memo.
Yeah, that'd just be kind of what's under A11.
Right.
Yes.
It would be replacing the language, the first indented language, with the second indented language. But it would maintain that string lighting is only allowed in the, and I changed the phrase from commercial and industrial to non-residential zones and non-residential use areas of mixed-use zones, because we have some planned developments that have a variety of commercial, industrial, residential. So I think this would be more precise, and there's certainly never, it was an intent that this would cover office areas too that technically aren't commercial zones or office zones. So that would be the proposal. If this is to remain in place, that it be reworded.
Okay, let me clarify what I was meaning there, was that if we, I was thinking that we were going to take a couple of steps here. One would be to determine sort of what we meant by taking string lighting out. The second would be, we just need to sort of shore up some language. All I wanted to do was shore up the language part, that if, you know, in any case, if we have the November to January date, that we would just have that as the date in the language. And then we still, I think, would need to have some discussion about the other part. I didn't want to.
Yes.
I wasn't trying to jump ahead of that. I just want to knock out the easy part if we were able. So if we want to back that off, I'm good with that.
What is the reference? Why do we need to, just help me understand the logic. If we're going to allow string lighting throughout the city, why do we have to reference a date and a time? My intent in my comments about string lighting was that it be allowed whenever
and wherever not be restricted within the zone, and not a particular date and time that, that it can be constrained by the time of year, or it be constrained, I'm not sure exactly why
Right.
legally, if you don't define that, why do you have to have that in ordinance?
This prohibition was put in place quite a few years before I came here, so I'm not familiar with the original rationale. It's my understanding that string lighting was felt to be not attractive, sometimes even dangerous, perhaps if there's broken bulbs, and that as a cleanup effort, they simply prohibited string lighting. And then when there was some pushback on that, or some objection that people wanted to decorate around the holiday season, it was amended, I believe, at one point to allow it essentially as a Christmas decoration, which is content regulation, which we're not supposed to do. But we do have other regulations that are in effect on just specific times. Like, for instance, our fireworks ordinance allows fireworks to be sold only at a certain time and to be used only at a certain time. So legally, that's defensible. Whether it's desirable or not is a whole different question. But it was put in that way to accommodate the holiday season. So again, which is why we brought this back up, because it was my understanding that at least some of you thought that by removing it, we were going to let people have string lights whenever and wherever they wanted, and of any color or not, whatever they wanted. But since that's not the effect, unless there's some other change made, that's why we want to bring this back up.
I would like to see us, where is that a problem, so we can address it. If that can't get through, if that's not the perspective that string lighting is allowed whenever and wherever, that's what I thought we had voted. So I would say, I would propose that we vote on that first, and then if whenever and wherever can get through, and everyone feels like
That's good. I'll withdraw that motion. That if that was made, I'll withdraw that, so we can start here.
I think I make the motion that string lighting be allowed whenever and wherever, and whatever ordinances. It seems like it's pulling something out as opposed to the backward way of looking at, the legal thing. You can't do something that's negative legislation as opposed to, allowing, if it's not in an ordinance, it's allowed.
Right. I believe that the method to do that, if that is council's wishes, right now, our definition of sign specifically provides that string lighting is a type of sign. So I think the way to handle this would be, and we'll check a lot of things to make sure we don't end up with a gap or something, but I believe that it would be to amend the definition to, and because it has been a sign, and rather than just striking it, I would amend it to provide that string lighting is not considered to be a sign.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
If we were to change it and so string lighting was not a sign, does that mean there would be no limitations whatsoever to how much string lighting, would that be?
If it's not regulated as a sign, then I don't believe there would be any restriction on it at all.
Okay. I'm not really up for that. As far as just unlimited all the time, whatever color, wherever you want to put it, I'm not sure that's a good idea in my opinion. Now, I had brought up last time, and we kind of got we got into the weeds a little bit, but it's fine. It was good. The idea of having some sort of a limitation on it that might be similar to our outline lighting, as far as just a sheer, some measurement of it, to where, if we have a limitation on outline lighting, then why wouldn't we have a measurement on this type of lighting? I guess that would be my idea. I'd go down the road of having some sort of limitation on it.
Right. That's a possibility, but I would point out that I think that if string lighting is to be allowed, there are probably going to be people who are going to want to put some of it in shrubs, bushes, and even small trees.
Like what would,
both around the holidays, and some are going to want to put that and leave it year-round.
Sure.
So I don't know how you could accommodate that if you had so many linear feet per
would that mean
frontage.
that,
Yeah.
for instance, a car lot could run string lighting from pole to poles, back to,
Yeah,
say, from
maybe.
poles to,
To the office building, or,
Yeah.
yeah.
All over the
Have to be
cars.
on their poles. It wouldn't be allowed to be put
Right.
on utility poles, public utility, street lights, or, public street lights, or power poles. But yes, that would be a possibility for certain.
So,
I think one of the concerns I've got is, and this is partly my fault because I asked that we eliminate all mention of sign lighting. And I think we've removed the definition of sign lighting as well, or string lighting.
This
And-
definition is a modification, so if of our current definition. So if this one is removed, then what's currently in place would stay in place. And right now, string lighting is defined as flexible or rigid. I don't understand how you can have rigid string lighting. So the amendment, and now maybe I'm slow, but I don't understand that. So the only amendment was to take out the words "or rigid" from the current definition. So
What is to prevent someone from taking string lighting and just basically creating a sign with it, as far as
writing
writing their
words.
name across the front of the building in great big letters, and them say, well, that's string lighting, that's not signage. I'm a little concerned that we may be getting too far away from what we think of string lighting. I think I'm okay with string lighting, and I'm okay with string lighting on Christmas trees and bushes and anything else that you'd like to decorate with it. And if you want to put pink up during a particular month, or if you want to put a particular color up to go in relation with Breast Cancer Awareness Month, or if you want to put up a particular color for Valentine's Day, or whatever it is that you might be marketing, I don't really have a huge problem with that. But I do have a problem when you start converting what it seems everybody always figures out a way to manipulate what the intent was. And I don't want them to be able to manipulate it to the point that they can take string lighting and, like you say, turn it into a rigid fixture where it's not a string and it's more of a solid sign. That's my concern with eliminating it completely.
I think that it would be a defensible position, and we would take the position that if you take string lighting and spell out your business's name and put it up on the wall, you've changed string lighting into a sign. You've created a sign, no matter whether it's made out of aluminum or string lighting or paint on cardboard, whatever it was, that you've created a sign with that, and we would regulate that as a sign. Now, it would also be possible that you could put the name of your business up in string lighting and come within the square footage that's allowable on that particular building. And you could have it as, you could make it out of string lighting.
Do you have an all or none idea on this?
Well, the problem that I see that when we start looking at worst-case scenarios is that, whenever you go down that road, you're going to legislate for a very small segment of what might be, and my inclination is to let the public decide whether that's a bad thing to do. I don't see the public safety or the, it's an aesthetic thing as opposed to a public safety thing, and I think as government, we ought to err on the right of allowing people to make those decisions themselves as opposed to making those decisions for them when we're trying to legislate for the worst case possible. And I think that's where the problem occurs, is when we can think of lots of cases how somebody could abuse this and make something gaudy or bad, but is it public safety that we're addressing? Is it something that's in our purview, something that we should actually constrain the public, or should it be a customer out there saying, that looks pretty gaudy up there, that's bad. That's not the way. I don't want to come to that business because it looks bad or it's inappropriate. I just would think, I feel safer being erring on the side of public's desire to make those decisions themselves, and we constrained hold ourselves back from making laws that may be constraining someone's desire to promote their business. And string lighting, to me, is an aesthetic thing. It either looks good or it looks bad. And if we try to say that string lighting looks bad, and we're going to legislate, we're going to come up with an ordinance that keeps somebody from doing something that looks bad to me and maybe even the majority of people in the community. But I'm not sure that's the place we need to be, planting our flag.
I think from a safety standpoint, we should try to keep string lighting away from the road. I think there's certainly an argument that if you're trying to pull out and somebody's got, if there's 3 lots in a row with string lightings, it might be a little difficult for, to get mixed in with car lights, stop lights, whatever. I mean, there's some argument to be near the road to me, but, whatever. I'm for limiting it, so I'll make that. I'll just go ahead and get that out there right now. If nobody's going to abuse it, then if we limit it, it won't hurt them. So it's, that's kind of the other side of the coin. It's right now you can go down Memorial and you can take a picture of multiple businesses that have streamers that exceed the amount of space they're supposed to have, and I suspect you can go down Broad and you can see the same thing, and I suspect some of that is also aesthetic. And the other thing you have to think about is it also has not only impact on their customers but their neighbors. So it's part of why we have a sign ordinance in the first place.
That's been my thought, because since we voted on this last Thursday night, I rode around the downtown area, and it's hard you can't compare each individual area, because really the downtown area, if you drive around the square, I would say that's not really been an issue, although we did have back last year a business that opened up on the square, and we had downtown businesses who were asking us to regulate what was being put in someone's signage or someone's windows. But I know that we got lax 6 years ago or so, and we ended up with a purple 30-foot gorilla that was on top of a building on Broad Street. And so I don't know how you figure. There's always going to be that exception, and unfortunately, if you look at what we have on our books, most of our ordinances that we have are for the exception. So I wish that I'm up for whatever we can find that's maybe a common sense way to take care of it. So,
well, just one more point. The reason that we are looking at our sign ordinance, I was told, and I think everybody would agree, that there's 2 reasons. One, we want it to be easy to understand from the people that are out there trying to conduct business, and we want it to be enforceable. Simple ordinance and one that's easily enforceable. And for us to do that, I think we have to be willing to hone that down to something that we can truly believe is enforceable. And if it's measuring length of strands of lights, our number of lights, our intensity of string lights, I don't see how that's going to be easy to enforce. And we can say whatever we want to. We can make it as restrained an ordinance as we want it to be. But it will not be enforced because we don't have staff to do it, and it won't be fairly enforced across the board. So, I'm just concerned that if we write a restrictive kind of ordinance related to something that is an aesthetic element, I don't believe we've accomplished what we set out to do, simple and enforceable.
Last week I brought up, and this is last time I'll say it, but we have the exact same situation with outline lighting. We already have the exact same thing. You can have a certain amount of outline lighting, which is 3 times your road frontage on your building. They have to go measure it. They have to enforce it. We could do the same thing with string lighting. It might be a little more difficult if they wad up a pile of it and stick it in a bush. Well, we may have to see if it's a 50-foot strand or a 100-foot strand, but, that may be just how we have to do it. But as far as keeping it simple and keeping it consistent, those exact things you just laid out, what I was mentioning last week and what I would continue to mention this week would be my idea, and I'm trying not to make it an emotion so that you can, I want you to have the opportunity to think through that a little bit, but it's just to say, let's make it the same as we have as our outline lighting. String lighting's here, outline lighting's here. You have a certain amount that you can have. We know how to measure it. That seems pretty simple and consistent for our business owners to be able to say, okay, look, whether it's an outline light or whether it's string lighting that I put up there to look like an outline light, it's all the same. You get 3 times your road frontage. You can put it up there however you want to.
May I make a suggestion?
Seem reasonable?
There have been some complaints, but for several years, we've lived fairly well with the current prohibition of string lighting except during the holiday period, November 15, January 15. We could go back to that with your instructions for us to start over on string lighting. One thing is, we've got a lot of changes in here, and I think most of them are not controversial and really need to be taken care of. We could effectively leave string lighting the way it has been, and staff and Planning Commission go back to work on that, and within the next few months come back, as soon as we can, come back to you with something, and maybe a couple of alternatives of, I mean, obviously one alternative is to stop regulating string lighting. That's, but there's probably a couple of other alternatives that we can look at and think about of ways that would make sense. Hopefully some ways that would make sense, and we can come back that way. And so if we just, for this purpose, if we leave this, the ordinance as you passed it on first reading, then the current limitation will be in effect, and we'll come back to it and address it as soon as we can.
Well, the good thing about that is the existing ordinance allows through January 16th, and we're in that
Right, so we're in that
window.
period now where...
But, so, just so I understand this, any changes that we make to the proposal would have to go through the public hearing process at the Planning Commission level and through any, is that what you're saying has to happen?
Well, if we're going to have a new kind of regulation of string lighting,
Right.
I mean, I think that you have the ability to just eliminate it, or to, what our amendment did was loosen it. What our amendment was intended to do was allow people to have clear or white string lighting any time of the year. It would effectively take the regulation. It was not going to be a limitation on the the number of feet or anything of that nature. It would still be prohibited from flashing or blinking, but it would have been allowed, and then colored string lighting would have been allowed in the November-January period. You could also take out the reference to colored and white lighting and just say string lighting is allowed. There's a variety of things we can do with this, but again, the amendment would have given more, it would have allowed people to use string lighting throughout the year.
But the question was, does it have to go back through those processes? Does it have to go back to the Planning Commission? You had mentioned the Planning Commission.
If, for instance, we want to come up with a proposal that would say you can have 3 linear foot of string lighting for each square foot of building frontage, or whatever, that kind of I think a new regulation would need to go through Planning Commission process and a public hearing with Planning Commission, and that's okay. We meet twice a month with Planning Commission, so that's not really a problem. But I think that to add a new regulation above what has been proposed in this ordinance as we presented it would need to go back through the planning process. We can take things out, and you can make some changes, but to add just a new type of regulation would need to go through planning.
Would that preclude any other elements of the ordinance that, I mean, is it just that? Does that relate to just that particular portion of the ordinance, or does it require the whole? Do we
well-
have to start to square one with the whole?
No,
amendments?
we would, well, it's what, number one, what we would propose to do or what you instruct us to do. And if it's to look at the provisions about string lighting and how we should handle it, then that's all we would look at. We wouldn't be going into the whole ordinance.
We've had lots of amendments, haven't we? I mean, along the way, right? I mean,
Unfortunately, we do.
Yeah.
The sign ordinance and the zoning ordinance do,
yeah. So it's been fairly typical.
things come up,
Yeah.
and we do amend it. So we're hoping to do that less in the future, but
Right. Well, since that would give our staff an opportunity to let our professionals go out there and figure out what the best way that they could put together, I'll move that we approve this on second reading as we did it on first reading, and that we instruct staff to come to bring this string lighting up by itself, bring back some ideas to us that we can address on a separate, only that issue. That's in the form of a motion.
Was there already a motion on the floor? I
Sorry.
believe there might have been. Mr. Shacklin, I'm not sure if you made yours in the form of a motion.
It may not have got a second, so it died for lack of a second.
No second.
It didn't, there was no second?
No.
So if there was no second, then it died.
Okay,
for
all
lack
right.
of a
I
second.
didn't want us to get something out of order here.
Do I need to make another motion?
No, I think you made your motion.
All right.
All right, we have a motion on the floor.
And we either need to vote it up or down. I'll second the motion.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
My question is, are we voting on second reading just as it was approved last week with no change? Is that where we're at?
Which would
with
be-
your amendment-
Yeah,
With
which-
your amendment to it, that it be researched and studied by staff and by the planning commission?
Yes,
Is that
that
the
we
motion?
would, yeah, that we would be understood that we will be addressing string lighting as a separate issue in the future.
But it's
Excuse
gonna-
me, there are two other things. This is really relating just to the string lighting
Right.
portion.
So I think what would be good.
Because we have three other
Yeah,
issues.
Let's just do
shortly to talk
string
about.
lighting
Okay.
first.
Yeah.
All right.
So this would be that as to string lighting, it's going to stay as
As
it was
is.
approved last time.
And
Yes.
Yes. So we have a motion that we're going to leave string lighting as is for right now, and then that's going to be studied again by Planning Commission and go through the process again. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
No, Woody seconded it, I don't think.
Well,
Mr. Young did.
Mr. Young
Oh, Doug
seconded.
did? Yeah, sorry, yes, thank you, yeah.
Okay, seeing no discussion, Ms. Wright, will call the roll.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
No.
Mr. Smotherman.
No.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Okay, let's move to window frame lighting. Mr. Ives.
Okay, a similar situation, but hopefully not quite as complex. On page 3 of the ordinance that's in front of you, the red-lined ordinance that's in front of you, at the top of page 3, paragraph 3 in parentheses, it's about 8-10 lines down. And it's where the words "or by string lighting" are stricken from the draft. Staff's intent in presenting the ordinance as it was originally presented was to prohibit the bright outline lighting that is used, has been come up within the last year or so. Some of it's colored, some of it blinks and flashes, some of it changes colors, some of it's bright white, and it would be to prohibit window outline lighting. And the wording, how we wrote it, was whether it was by a continuous light strip or string lighting or other similar product. So already we've taken the word string lighting out of there. But again, from the discussion, there was some discussion about the window frame lighting, and we just want to make sure that we're putting in here what you intend. So, and I guess the question is whether you desire to prohibit the outline lighting of windows or not. And obviously, if you do, then this whole section 3 or subparagraph 3 here comes out. If you don't, it would. If you want to put a limit on that, this will stay in as currently written. Is that clear? I hope.
Is there any difference between what I consider tube lighting, which is the tubes that have a changing color in them and they almost appear like string lighting, but they're actually encased inside a tube with LED lights. Is there a difference between what I'm going to call tube lighting and string lighting?
I believe there is, but that probably could be argued. And I have not, with everything else going on, I have not taken the time yet to stop and look at some of those lights that are in some of the places, take a picture of them so we could, have so we could have a better discussion about what they are. They look like continuous, many of them look like continuous lights. Some of them look like just a light strip. But
it's almost like a fluorescent tube with brakes in it.
Yes, yeah. And some of them don't have brakes, and some of them do, and some of them could effectively be string lights, which is why we had put the term, a continuous light strip or string light in there.
So where are we right now
Well, right now,
with this type of light?
as written, the window frame lighting by a continuous light strip or other similar product illuminating the perimeter of one or more individual windows or groups of windows will be prohibited. The only thing that would change is that the string lighting would be taken out from that. So if you take what we're all picturing as standard string lighting and put it around the window, that'd be fine. If it's something other than that, it wouldn't be.
This is really more complex than it sounds like it should be. It seems
Yes.
like this should not be that complex, but it kind of is.
I would say that I think that the provision about window frame outlining is, I think, almost purely aesthetic. Council, the city has some ability to regulate aesthetics and to control aesthetics. It's not unlimited, but of course we have some pretty solid controls, restrictive controls on the aesthetics in the gateway, and we have retained a consultant to work on design guidelines for the rest of the city, and perhaps different ones for different parts of the city. That primarily is its aesthetics. And this is an aspect of that. When these things first came out, there were objections from some people, not a riot, not hundreds of people, but a few people objected to some really bright, it seemed very garish, bright lights outlining windows that showed up in some stores. And over the past few year or so, there continues to be new ones of those show up, or additional stores are using those. It is an aesthetic issue, and I don't think, as long as they're not, if they're flashing and blinking and that sort of thing and changing colors, then you've got more of a distraction issue and perhaps a public safety issue, but that would be prohibited anyway. So if subparagraph 3 is stricken completely, those window frame lights still won't be able to flash, blink, change colors. No,
Still won't be able to.
Yeah, that's prohibited, but it would continue to be prohibited. But those are, that's an enforcement issue too. If you go in a store and say, you can't have that flash, and they say, oh, gee, I'm sorry, and they turn off the flasher, and before you get to the car, they may have turned it back on, or wait 5 more minutes and turn it back on. And
But the Planning Commission, when they passed this, they passed it as we passed it on first reading as it relates to this? Or only without, because we pulled out the string lighting is the only difference, right?
Yes.
I think the Planning Commission thought that it would only get worse before it got better. The more the window outlines, and then if they go to flashing, and I think that's why that we did that. And David, you're right, we do have some reasonable to regulate aesthetics, reasonable opportunities to regulate aesthetics. But what is reasonable to me may not be reasonable to you, so. But that's what we presented, and that's what we studied, and
Correct.
And that's what we brought to council.
I'll move, we move along with it like it is. You can always change it too, right?
All right, we have a motion.
I'll second it.
We have a second. Ms. Wright, call the roll.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
No.
Mr. Smotherman?
No.
Mr. Washington?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. Move to window signs.
I hope we're going to get a little easier. Partly,
Last time.
partly from, it wasn't much, was it? I'm a bad predictor, I guess. Partly from the discussions about window signs, and partly from our own continuing to look at it after last meeting. We think we can clarify the definitions a bit from what is in the ordinance as we presented it to you last time. The proposed changes are at the bottom of the first page of my memo and the top of the second page. So we have 2 definitions. We have a window sign permanent, window sign temporary. What we would propose to substitute this wording for window sign permanent be a sign, regardless of content, that is painted on or etched into the inside or outside of a window, or a window sign installed pursuant to a sign permit. Depending on the circumstances of a digress permit, it would be not impossible, it's certainly within the realm of possibility, that someone wants to use a window as part of their attached signage and do it pursuant to a sign permit. So if that's, it still would not be able to cover more than 25% of the window. But anyway, to continue, we would say that product or merchandise placed as a display and not attached to the window or window frame is excluded from this definition. And then the definition for temporary window sign would be a sign that is attached to a window or window frame that is not permanent. References back to the permanent. We think these will be clearer than the definitions that we had first proposed, and would ask that you approve substituting these revised definitions into the ordinance before it's passed on second reading. Any questions?
Yeah.
I think that's a good clarification on a confusing thing that we did pass, and I'll let him make comment, but I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve that change as presented.
I'll second it.
Does anybody know what we're doing?
Adopting this language to the...
Yeah, to the last
This
one.
doesn't require going through the planning commission or anything, this
No.
kind of thing? A change in definition is appropriate?
I don't believe that this is a substantive change in the definition. If we were going to make a drastic amendment to it, then perhaps it would. But I think this is a clarification of wording, not a substantive change, and I do not believe that this needs to go back to Planning Commission or have another public hearing here before council.
So, just so the public can kind of understand this while I'm understanding it, when we talk about 25% of your window, if it is a ½ inch off of that glass, it does not come under the temporary sign ordinance. If it's in contact with the glass, it's a part of a temporary sign. But if it's a ½ inch off of that glass, it's not a temporary sign.
Or if it's attached to the window frame.
Or if it's attached to the window frame.
Right.
Now,
if-
y'all understand all the discussion was about obstruction of view and all this, and the ordinance now allowing this language basically gives someone an option to kind of do what we were concerned about anyway. ½ inch off the glass.
But this will permit window displays. It
I
will
understand.
permit somebody to hang
It's
stuff
great.
from the ceiling
And I
inside.
appreciate that component to it. I'm just worried that what we have adopted and what we're considering and what our concerns with saying do what you want to with your window inside your business. What I'm concerned about is that we were concerned about obstruction of view, safety, or whatever considerations that caused us to pass 25%. With this definition, somebody is going to be able to do extensively what you have said what we've said we were concerned about.
Bill, I'll be honest with you. When we did away with the clear sight zone, I gave up on safety.
Okay.
And at that point, I threw that out.
Okay.
So now, if you want to cover your entire window, it's okay with me, except for the fact that what you do in your business is your business, but when you put it on the glass, I think that's what we're trying to clarify here. Or if you hang it from the window frame, then it would be a violation. If you are hanging it from the interior ceiling of your business or standing it on an easel inside the window, we're not going to disrupt that. And basically, if you want to build a box that encases your window, where you've got a window display like we think of back in the 50s, where you had window displays and mannequins and that type thing in the windows. I don't remember the 50s, 60s, but 60s. But that would be okay. And I mean, we've got many stores in the Avenue who have actually been able to work around the window restrictions by having window displays. And I'll just, Gap is a perfect example of somebody who you can't see back through the store because 3 feet back they have built partition walls and basically put signage and sales and their mannequins and displays and everything in the window. So I think that, the concern of safety, I took that off my list of priorities when we did away with the clear.
And I think
clear
staff's
sight
done a good job of trying to interpret what we were trying to do, but I'm just saying it's kind of, to me, ironical that we have basically said a ½ inch off your glass is your property, do with what you want to, but on your glass, we want to regulate 25%.
It's hard to
I
believe
just
that
don't understand. I don't
window
understand how we can do that. That just doesn't make logical sense as an operator of a business that trying to figure out how to do that. I wouldn't put that on my window, but yet, why shouldn't I be able to if that's what I think is going to attract my
There aren't many scenarios, though, that your window frame's not going to be 3 or 4 inches as far as the depth of your window frame that supports that glass. And you still would be prohibited to go attach it to that window frame.
So the old rule
What-
said,
What makes it make sense to me,
Okay.
and I don't know if this helps, but if you've got, the way our current ordinance is written for signage, so just say that you've get, and Mr. Whitaker, I see you back there, not the MED Mr. Whitaker, the Murfreesboro, the other Mr. Whitaker. If you've got 100 linear feet of road frontage, we're telling you that you get 200 square feet of signage on your building. Well, if you include, just say bricks, you get 200 square foot of space that you can put on your building. Well, if you include the windows, then all of a sudden, that square footage may go up to 500 square feet. So the way I look at it is that signage is signage. If we say that you get X number of square footage on your building, you should really look at that as a blank canvas and say, here's what it is. This is what your signage is. And so that's where if you
But
look.
we've just allowed with the definition, Mayor, we've just allowed, with this definition that we're talking about, we've allowed them to do exactly what you're saying. 500 feet of window, if you've got window and it's a half inch off that glass, you can do whatever you want to with it.
Well, and I agree. I think whatever you do inside your business is up to you, much like the example.
So the inside of my glass is not the inside of my business?
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, the inside of your glass is the inside of your business, but when you attach something to that, it becomes signage, which I think that's fair. Otherwise, you're going to end up having 350 square feet of signage. So say someone that has more windows on their building, they may end up with double the amount of square footage than someone who doesn't.
And that's the choice that an individual trying to merchandise his business and keep his business alive has a choice to whether he puts windows there or brick. And if he chooses to put windows in his business, put your product there, put your signage there, do with that window what you want to inside your business. Now, I agree, if it was on the outside of the window, I'm concerned about that. I would say that's probably stretching the envelope. But we've said inside your business is inside your business. If inside your business is inside your business, the inside of my glass is my business. And regulating that, obviously, you know, the council last time said that was not an issue, and you felt that the best thing for our community was to do that. And we'll live with it, I'll live with it. And business community will live with it. But the point needs to be made. Try to be consistent with what we're saying so that people can understand inside my business is inside my business, but not on your inside of your window. That we're going to regulate.
Well, but
that doesn't make sense to a businessman.
But this is the part
It
that
may to other people that are in different professions, but it doesn't to a businessman.
Well, I think that, you know, you always hear about we all have rights,
I understand.
right? But there's a business on Broad Street or Memorial that we all got phone calls about that is next to a sandwich shop, and they had completely covered up their windows, and a lot of it was with explicit material. And so you could all the windows were all X-rated things that were on the windows, and we all said, what can we do? So the thing is, I think we are being consistent. I think we're saying signage is signage, windows are windows. So, and I think that's one of the things that, I guess it's just you have to
Choose to disagree.
agree to disagree.
Agree to disagree.
So,
One of the things we also need to remember is that we've increased this percentage from 15. How many years did we have an ordinance that said 15% of windows? And now we've increased it to 25. And we've put in the caveat that you have the opportunity to put it all in one window and leave the others blank, or you can divide those windows up. So you have an opportunity as a businessman to determine how you want that signage done in your windows. So I don't think we're limiting the opportunity of businessmen. You know what I do, and I know what you do. And I've got a storefront and large windows, and I want my customers to look inside my store. I don't want to cover up hardly anything at all.
And I know there's been a lot of conversation about what caused us to start doing this investigation on changing the sign ordinance. But a great deal of it was stimulated by the Supreme Court ruling on content, which said we had to change our ordinance. And that ruling was something that we had to abide by. And because of certain parts of our ordinance, we had to go in and do some tweaking. That was part of the stimulation, and then part of it was the police department said, well, if you're going to do that, then if you could make it safer for us, it would be great. And I thought, well, here's a great opportunity. I think we lost that opportunity when we decided that it was not a good idea to have a free sight zone. But because I was in favor of 100% with the exception of what would be in that free sight zone. I understood, and I changed my approach on that because so many businesses came back and said, Eddie, we've already got signs that fall within that sight zone that you're talking about, and it's going to cost us a great deal of money to take those signs down and replace them. And I understood, and I said, okay, I understand. And so there was my compromise. I said, let's just try and make what we've got better. We were at 15% of every single window pane. Not a combined window glass frontage, but each window was allowed 15%. Now, we know that many, many businesses in Murfreesboro were in complete violation of our ordinance at that time. But we felt like in order to allow small businesses and large businesses an opportunity to advertise greater than what they currently were under our existing ordinance, we went from 15% to 25%, thinking, let's give them more space, and this will be a good thing. I don't think the intentions when we started out was ever to say an all or nothing. But it was to control content, it was to improve safety, and it was to be more business friendly. And some of those things, I think the safety issue kind of got thrown out, but as far as the content we need to fix and the ability to be more business friendly, which I think this is because it certainly was an improvement over what we had. I think that was what the intentions of the Planning Commission and I think now perhaps the council is.
Bill, I will say one thing. Shacklett's Photography, not that I'm trying to advertise for your business. I think they're
Christmas presents though for anybody.
Yeah.
You got 30 seconds.
I think there are businesses like yours who do it the right way, and who you look at it and you go, that's the right way to do it. But I think there are just as many businesses in areas of our community who don't do it the right way. And what I'm more worried about is we're going through this 2035 plan, and we've over the last week been called all kinds of nice names over regulating signage, but you cannot promote redevelopment and economic development in areas that look like no one wants to go there. And so if you drive down the areas that you really are working on, where we're working on redevelopment, and you see what people are doing in their windows, sure, that's their property, but we're never going to be able to improve. It's that saying, you do what you've always done, you get what you've always got. And that's my concern. People like what you've done at your business are not the worries. It's some of the businesses that you drive down and you see the entire business they don't want you to see in their business. And so, we talk about maybe some of our local motels that mandate that they have to keep their blinds shut. Don't open the blinds. And it's out of sight, out of mind. And so that's the part where it's not a signage issue, it's an economic issue. So.
And Bill, just the old sign ordinance had a 3-foot buffer. They counted everything within 3 feet of the inside of your window. The 1994 version that went all the way through 2004 or whatever. And so that went away. So what's happened over the last 10 or 15? So over the last 10 or 15 years, here's what's happened. We went from you couldn't have it within 3 feet of your window without us regulating it, to now we're saying if it's attached to your window or your window frame, we're going to regulate it, and we're going to go from 15% to 25%. I understand your concern, but what has happened here, I don't think is the argument for we're not being business friendly or we should let businesses do whatever they want to. I don't really think that's the direction we've gone completely. Now, have we restricted some people from doing what they might want to do? Yep. We do it every day. And so where we draw the line might be a little different for all 6 of us up here, but it seems to me like we've done a fairly reasonable job to come up with a reasonable solution that gives folks what they, like I said, if you look around, and we've all known, we've seen what Gary and these guys have done, the 25% covers the vast, vast majority, in the 90% and more of the businesses in our town, that they're not going to be in violation. So I think we're being relatively business friendly here. Where are we in the schedule, in the
We've got
agenda
a
here?
motion and a second.
All right.
We do?
Ms. Wright, call the roll.
Mr. LaLance,
Would you
What was the
repeat the
motion?
motion, please?
I believe your motion was to approve substituting the 2 new definitions that are in my
yes.
memo
Aye.
for the definitions that are currently in the ordinance.
The easy one. That was the easy one, right? Yeah. Aye.
Mr. Shacklet,
Because of the implication in what it basically says, that to me appears to be the wrong statement about what we're doing. Let me just say something real quick, if I can, before I make my vote. I appreciate the staff and the work that they've done to try to accommodate me. I've met with them, and they've been extremely accommodating, trying to help me resolve my own problems with this ordinance. And I appreciate my colleagues that have tried to see the other side of this. But if I don't go where my heart tells me to go and vote my concerns about something, I'm not sure I would be doing the right thing myself. So it's not a matter of not appreciating the work that David and Gary and Amanda, Amelia, everybody has done. I appreciate it. This is not an easy thing to do. Like I said when we started this, it's like cleaning out your closet. Nobody wants to do it, but you got to do it every so often. And my intent was to follow the idea of making, I've drawn back to this a million times, is that our goal was to make it simple and enforceable. And when I see us do things that don't make it simple or make it difficult for the people, the staff to do their job, more difficult to do it, and thereby being arbitrarily enforced, I've got to vote no. So on this vote, I'll have to vote no.
Mr. Smotherman,
Aye.
Mr. Washington,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young,
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye.
I'm not going to make a prediction on this one, but the final item, we had announced originally that the provisions regarding the window signs would take effect 6 months after first reading. We expected to have this on the agenda on the 19th, on November 19th, and so we provided for an effective date for the window provisions to be May 19th. Since it didn't get to you until December 3rd, we'd like to change that effective date for the window signage to June 3rd, June 3rd, 2016.
So moved.
Motion is second.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
No.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Council,
And now we
David,
will be ready to consider this ordinance on second reading. I'm sorry,
Okay.
not meaning to steal your thunder, Mayor.
so we'll consider for
As-
passage on
as amended.
second reading, as amended, ordinance 15057, amending Murfreesboro City Code, Chapter 25 and a quarter, Sections 25 and a quarter 2, 23, 25, 29, regarding exempt signs, temporary signs, and certain non-conforming signs. And you have the ordinance in front of you.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
No.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. I want to thank staff for the hard work that they've put in this, the council members also, the hard work you've put. Bill, you're one of the most thoughtful people I have ever met, and there is not one single council member up here who does not value your opinion. So it's one of those things we all will sometimes agree to disagree. Now, I will disagree with you where you said that it's like cleaning your closet. I think it's more like cleaning a diaper. So, you don't want to do it, but it's got to be done. So that's coming from...
Been a long time, Mayor.
Not as long as I would like it to be. So, all right, we'll move into first readings. Letter from City Recorder, Finance Director, Ordinance 15067, amending 2015-2016 budget, and this is our third amendment. Ms. Wright?
Mayor, this is formalizing something you approved on a previous agenda, allowing for a new position in the Building Codes Department for a full-time electrical inspector. And to do that, we need to put that into the budget the same way the budget was passed originally, which is by ordinance, which requires 3 readings.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Mr. Washington?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. That passes on first reading. We'll move to new business. Pursuant to Resolution 15R-PH63, adopted by the City Council on October 15, 2015, fixing the time of public hearings to consider 1, adoption of the Plan of Services, 2, annexation, 3, zoning for approximately 12.6 acres along Osborne Lane, which had been proposed to be annexed to the City of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, 2015-506, 2015-423. Notice that said public hearings were published in the November 23, 2015 issue of a local newspaper. Mr. Blomley.
Thank you, and good evening, Member McFarland and members of the council. Our first of 2 public hearings tonight dealing with the same property as with regards to the annexation petition and the plan of services for property that's located along the north side of Osborne Lane. It's 12.6 acres. I've included a map with a wider view, and you can see that on the screen before you. This is along the north side of Osborne Lane, and it is east of Memorial Boulevard and directly to the north across Osborne Lane from the Hamptons subdivision, if you're familiar with the Hamptons. Mr. Stuart Conway, the current owner of the property, has requested annexation and zoning. For the first public hearing, as I mentioned, we'll be dealing strictly with the annexation and the plan of services. The zoning will be in the following public hearing, and I will give a presentation on zoning before that public hearing. With regards to the annexation, Mr. Conway has requested annexation in order to benefit from city-provided services for potential development of the property. The staff has conducted an annexation feasibility study and plan of services, and has, as evidenced by the plan of services, will be able to provide services upon the effective date of annexation. The property, as you can see, is contiguous with the existing city limits. It is within the city's urban growth boundary, and the property owner has petitioned the city for annexation. No right-of-way has been included in this annexation request, as the right-of-way of Osborne Lane in front of the subject property is already inside the city limits. The Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on this annexation petition and plan of services and unanimously recommended its approval on October 7th. I'll be happy to answer any questions regarding the annexation petition and plan of services. Mr. Conway is in the audience if you have any questions for him.
Any questions for Mr. Baldwin? I have one question. What bowl game is Auburn in this year?
I believe it's the Birmingham Bowl, I believe. Hey, look on the bright side, we made a bowl, so I'm happy.
Just making sure. All right.
That's funny.
We're going to open the public hearing, and then, yes. Okay, before we open the public hearing, just to remind you of our public hearing rules, you're allowed to speak for 3 minutes unless you're representing a group, then you get 5 minutes. If you'll direct all of your comments to the City Council, any questions, we'll get those answered at the end of the public hearing. And we will ask that you're allowed to speak one time. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this annexation request, we will, and this is the annexation request, we'll open our public hearing.
Your turn.
My name is Joe Morton. My wife, Paula Morton. We're residents that live on Osborne Lane. We're here for the first time tonight, so apologize for maybe speaking out of turn a minute ago. Didn't know how this really works, but just wanted to come tonight and find out a little bit more about what's going to be happening. It's almost across the street from us. We live probably 300 yards from this property on the opposite side of the street. And so we're basically here to, and maybe this isn't the meeting that we're going to find a whole lot about those kind of details, but we're just here to find out what we can. So are there any plans to narrow the street or widen the street or anything like that? Or is this the proper meeting for that?
We'll get that answered for you right at the end of the public, or we'll close the public hearing and we'll get your questions answered. And then actually we're doing the annexation request, so there's actually going to be a couple more opportunities that you'll be able to have when we talk about the zoning request that'll come through as well.
Okay.
So we'll make sure we get your questions answered. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Balmy, would you just, I think it'd be good to walk through the process if you could, please.
Sure. The property is currently not in the city limits. It's in the unincorporated county. Mr. Conway, upon acquiring the property, filed two requests. One, a petition for annexation into the city limits. And that petition for annexation into the city limits allows the property to benefit from city-provided services, whether it's developed or not. In its present state, there are not as many services as it would receive if it were developed, but in its present state, undeveloped with only a couple of agricultural structures. For example, it would receive city fire protection, city police protection, and city brush and debris removal. There would likely not be a need for the rolling garbage pickup since there's no residential or commercial structure on the property. But the annexation would bring it into the city's jurisdiction, and the city would regulate any future development on the property if it were annexed into the city limits. The next request that we have on the agenda is a zoning request, which would give the property certain land use entitlement rights as far as how the property could develop. Absent a zoning request, the property would be given an interim zoning classification, if annexed, of RS-15, which is single-family residential with a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet. The applicant has requested an RS-12 zoning classification, and in the presentation on zoning, I will go over more with regards to that. But to answer the gentleman's question, at this time we have not received a plan. It's my understanding that Mr. Conway is not a residential developer. He has purchased the property in order to have it annexed and zoned to market it for possible residential development by someone other than himself. And Mr. Conway is here in the audience if you have any questions directly for him about what his intentions are with the property. I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
It's big enough to build apartments on. It's not big enough for a school site.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Balmy. Any questions about the annexation?
Excuse me, Mayor, the first step is to consider the adoption of the plan of services.
Correct. So now we'll consider for adoption Resolution 15RPS.
Do we do it backwards now?
Did you close the public hearing?
Yes, I did, yeah. We'll consider for adoption Resolution 15RPS 63 to adopt a plan of services for approximately 12.6 acres located along Osborne Lane, simultaneous with the annexation. Stuart Conway is the applicant.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. Ms. Wright, will call the roll.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Mr. Washington?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. We'll now consider for adoption Resolution 15R A63 to annex approximately 12.6 acres located along Osborne Lane, simultaneous with the effective date of zoning. Stuart Conway, applicant, 2015-506.
For approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, if you'll call the roll.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. So, Mr. Morton, what we did is we've voted now just to bring the property into the city. And so now Mr. Blomley will now go over what the zoning request will be. Okay, Mr. Blomley.
Thank you, Mayor McFarland. This is the companion zoning request. As I mentioned, Mr. Conway has made a request to have the property zoned RS-12 simultaneous with annexation. The RS-12 zoning classification is single-family residential district with minimum lot sizes of 12,000 square feet. As I mentioned, were there not to be a zoning request simultaneous with annexation, the property would be given an interim zoning classification of RS-15 upon annexation. The difference being that the RS-15 has a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet, which is a little over a third of an acre, and the RS-12 zoning classification has a minimum lot size of 12,000 square feet, which is less than a third of an acre. The property is directly adjacent to like zoning. If you look on the map, if we could pull the map back up, please. If we could put the map back on the screen. Thank you. The property that is colored in orange is the subject of this request. The property in the yellow color are properties that are already located within the city's jurisdiction. And you'll see that directly across the street, the Hamptons is already zoned RS-12, which is the same zoning classification that the applicant has requested. Likewise, Ridgeport, which is directly to the west of the subject property, is zoned RS-12, as is the Reserve subdivision to the northwest of the subject property. The property directly to the north, which is shown in white, that is as shown unincorporated, was recently annexed and zoned PRD, Planned Residential District. That was the Valley Brook PRD, which was a combination of single-family attached or townhome development and single-family detached product. So that property to the north, had the map been updated, would be PRD instead of just being in the county. But as I mentioned, the proposed zoning classification is consistent with the surrounding zoning in the immediate vicinity. As I mentioned, Mr. Conway has indicated to us that he does not have any immediate plans to develop the property, but that he would like to market the property. And as I mentioned, Mr. Conway is here present if you have any questions for him and his future intentions with the property. But that is my understanding after conversations with him after he made the application.
Matthew, with the exception of about a 10-foot strip, this property is completely surrounded now by city property, correct? Which is zoned pretty equivalent to what we're looking at here with the...
The parcel directly to the east of the subject property remains in the county.
Right.
And that parcel would be connected to the...
That 10-foot.
By a 10-foot strip.
Right.
On the north, or on the south side of the Valley Brook parcel that we recently annexed. And as I mentioned, if you'd like, Mr. Conway is here, and he may be able to provide some additional detail on what his intentions are for the property.
I don't want to hear it. We're still in public hearing.
And the Planning Commission did conduct a public hearing and recommended the RS-12 zoning classification unanimously on October 7th.
All right, seeing that we don't have any comments or questions, I'm going to open the public hearing for this zoning request. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, please come to the podium. Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. We'll consider for passage on first reading ordinance 15OZ63 to zone approximately 12.6 acres located along Osborne Lane as single-family residential 12 RS-12 district.
Move.
Mayor, this is consistent with the neighborhoods adjacent to this, so I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right. We'll now consider recommendations of the principal planner about scheduling public hearings for the amendment to the Sheffield Park PRD located along Veterans Parkway, rezoning along Otter Trail, and amendment to the Three Rivers PRD located east of Cason Lane.
Thank you, Mayor McFarland. During its regular meeting on December 2nd, 2015, the Planning Commission conducted public hearings on the following matters. PRD amendment for approximately 91.5 acres located along Veterans Parkway to amend the Sheffield Park PRD. Beezer Homes was the applicant. A rezoning application for approximately 3.9 acres located along Otter Trail to be rezoned from RZ to RM16 and from RM16 to RZ. Swanson Development is the applicant. And finally, a PRD amendment for approximately 22.5 acres located east of Cason Lane to amend the Three Rivers PRD. Green Trails LLC is the applicant. After the public hearings, the Planning Commission discussed the matters and then took action to recommend their approval. It is recommended that the City Council schedule these matters for public hearings. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mayor, we would recommend January 7. There is already a matter set for public hearing on the 7th, and I believe that there'll be plenty of time to handle these as well.
Move to set a public hearing January 7th.
We got early meetings that night, too.
Second. Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman? Mr. Washington?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Where is that van?
Aye.
Where'd that vote come
That was on
from?
red light cameras.
It's no one.
You can't vote from the bathroom.
Okay, we'll move into
Just to show
recommendations.
you how terrible Rick is, he said, we just voted on the red light camera to run the contract.
Hey, well, at least I'm sure several of y'all have probably seen that video, but at least you're not the council member who went to the bathroom with his microphone still on, discussing the public hearing, and the council member was in the bathroom. So.
I'm back.
Yeah. So, all right. Podium is yours.
Well, I'm here tonight. I'm very excited about this. This is something we've been working on off and on for several years now, and some things always come up that has kept us from coming this far to bring this to the council, but I'm bringing tonight to you the recommendation that we approve us adopting the Healthways Prime and Healthways Silver Sneakers fitness programs in SportsCom and Patterson Park Community Center. And just briefly what that is, just to give you a little bit of background about it, is Healthways is a company that works with insurance companies, health plans, and healthcare fitness facilities such as us, and they work with the insurance companies to provide little to no cost memberships to gyms for various insurance programs and participants. So they have come to us, and we are looking at offering the Healthways Prime Fitness program, which falls under various insurance programs. It's the prime level on a lot of insurance programs that would give participants free membership to SportsCom and Patterson at our general level, and that's usually normally costs about $3 a visit or $30 a month, $25 a month. The company will reimburse us for the participants when they come. They will reimburse us $3 for every visit, up to $30 in that area. The Silver Sneakers program is for people who are Medicare eligible, and that again will allow them to have free access to SportsCom and Patterson to use our facilities, and the Healthways will reimburse us $250 for each visit, up to $25, which is comparable to what our normal $3 a visit and $25 a month. Along with the Silver Sneakers program as well, we will be, in the near future, we will also be offering Silver Sneakers exercise classes. We're going to start those at SportsCom and then add them on to Patterson as we can open up schedules there. So we're going to be offering more fitness opportunities for the public, as well as some additional classes in the future. And so we've got all the contracts ready. We've got it gone through legal with it, and now we're just waiting for Mayor McFarland's signature after your approval for that.
If there's no questions, I'll move for approval.
Second.
I want to commend the staff at Parks and Rec. This is, I've had several people call me about, and I don't know whether you organized it or not, but several people commented about it, so I had a chance to read the documents that you provided us, and it, as Doug and I get older, yeah, it is. It's neat to see that we're making, looking outside the box of what traditional Parks and Rec has provided. You're going to stay outside the box.
Yeah, I want to stay outside the box.
But it is really interesting to me that you're looking at these kind of alternative ways to provide health, so people can look at their health alternatives and partner with them into being healthier. There are a lot of residual effects that when our public is healthier, we all benefit. So I appreciate that.
Amen.
I think the good thing too is with the closing of the YMCA, that was one of the predominant things that we got back. That was the loss of that Silver Sneakers program, because there was really a contingent that that was what they did. They were at that there every single morning. I mean, R.W. Smotherman is in his 90s and he's still there every single morning because he participated in that. And so this now gives an opportunity for that to continue. So I'm excited that you've done this. So
We're very excited too.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Wright?
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Mr. Washington?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye.
I want to stay out of that one.
We'll consider recommendations of the City Schools Finance Administrative Services Director, approval Energy Efficient Schools Initiative contract loan with state and additional funds for the city.
While Mr. Anderson is making his way to the microphone, let me update what appears on your agenda. If you read your agenda item, it appears there are 3 items for your approval tonight: a performance contract, a loan with the state of Tennessee, and additional funds from the city. When you adopted your CIP last Thursday night, you took care of that 3rd item, the additional funds from the city. So those dollars are programmed into our CIP and will be taken care of.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm here again to present you with another opportunity for the city schools to enter into an energy efficiency school initiative program. This one is a total project with a cost of $5.6 million. What's different about this one than the previous ones I brought to you in the previous years is this one comes with a guaranteed savings of over $7 million, $7,728,000. With the guarantee, the state of Tennessee has made available to us a loan at 0% interest with a 0.75 administration fee of $2.14 million. And then after you have approved your CIP plan, as Mr. Crumley said, we would have the funding available to do these energy efficiency upgrades. What we're doing is we are continuing along a process of, this is the 4th time I've come to you for these, and we continue along to constantly upgrade our facilities with the most recent energy efficiency upgrades we can get. We have made sure that the team that we put together is available to us, and we have put on, asked them, the company, to add Johnson & Bailey Architects and Intech Engineering, since they know our schools and they know what we're about. So what we're here asking for you tonight is to approve the guaranteed performance contract with ESG and approve us accepting the loan from the state of Tennessee, which they have already said is available to us for the $2.14 million. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you would have on the projects. Again, this is part of our continuing effort to make the best environment for our students and also to have the most energy efficiency schools and keep a good eye on the taxpayer dollars that we can save the money in the overall program.
Just a couple of questions. who's the guarantor of the savings?
The company ESG is the guarantor of the savings based on when they put together the program, they have to go to the state of Tennessee and prove to them what the savings potential is, and then they put together their pro formas and they say, we guarantee you will save this much money. If you do not, we will write you a check at the end of each year.
Do they write the state a check, or do they write us a check?
They write us a check.
Okay.
The aspect that I didn't say to you is that since the school systems would be reducing the overall energy cost on these, the school system would pay for these loans based on the savings that we would receive. So we're not asking the city council to pick up any expenses. The state does require, though, that the city council take on the loan from the state. We cannot do that. It has to be, as in the past experiences, has to be from the city.
I know this past week, Councilman Washington, Councilman Shacklett, and myself were fortunate enough to tour the schools and not only see some wonderful teachers using wonderful teaching techniques with the students, but we were able to observe some of the HVAC systems that have been improved for energy efficiency, as well as the lighting that has been improved for energy efficiency, and certainly they work as well as and better in most cases than what was there before. I know the heating cooling system is quieter, and the lighting system certainly seemed to put out at least as much light, if not more. And so I think these are good things for our school system, and I'm going to move for passage.
Second.
Motion second. Ms. Wright?
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklett?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Mr. Washington?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
You have two different board and commission approvals that you have looked at. Murfreesboro Golf Commission reappoint Mr. Bill Allen as who is currently serving as the chairman, Mr. Larry Wilkerson, and Mr. Whit Turnbow. And then you also have the Power Board recommendation from Mr. Lyons to appoint Miss Irene Pitts McDonald.
So
Move
moved.
approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklett?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Mr. Washington?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. Beer permit?
We don't have any tonight.
We have one statement or one bill to be paid. I think Mr. Smotherman was going to give us a motion.
I'll move we pay the statement.
Second. Motion is second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklett?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Mr. Washington?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. And we have item HB that was pulled off of the consent agenda. And Mr. Lyons, are you going to, or Mr. Cromley going to present that?
I've already put it up.
Mayor and Council, during the month of May, the city received an invitation from Middle Tennessee Electric Co-op to consider the sale of the Murfreesboro Electric Department. As part of the due diligence necessary for examining any sort of transaction of that nature, one of the first items that had to be done was an appraisal of the electric department to try to place some range of value on what the electric department might be worth. The purchasing department sent out a request for qualifications to appraisal firms and to engineering companies that have appraisal arms looking for experience in performing these types of valuations. The City Council, in the same time frame, was appointing a selection committee, an evaluation committee, consisting of a member of City Council, Councilman LaLance, a member from Power Board, Mr. Rick Stone, a representative of the largest commercial user in town, Middle Tennessee State University, Joe Bales, our industrial development efforts, Brian Hercules, and a citizen at large from the community, Sandra Trail. On November 18th, that committee looked at the two proposals received by the purchasing department and ranked those proposals, recommending to you all tonight hiring GAI Consultants of Orlando, Florida, at a cost of $19,000 to perform this initial valuation study. We would consider this a preliminary valuation to establish a range of fair value. At that point in time, both the City Council and Middle Tennessee Electric would have a go, no-go type decision point based on what that fair value comes back as. If it's deemed that we need to go further, there's far more detailed work that has to be done on appraisal. There's far more work that needs to be done on other fronts in terms of our due diligence in looking at a potential sale of the electric department. I'll try to answer any questions if you have some. The committee is recommending GAI Consultants tonight to the council for approval.
I know it. When this was first presented to us, there were questions regarding the process. How do we proceed? What are the legal limitations to us? Could you give just a little bit of understanding or update as to how that has proceeded as far as whether this is legal, and how does it proceed if we decide to go one way or the other? Or
it has actually proceeded very slowly.
Okay.
Take you back about 5 months where the City Council employed Bolt Cumming Aaron's law firm in Nashville to serve as a special counsel in looking at components of a potential transaction. Those types of questions about how do you do it, legality of it, and so on, haven't really been answered at this point in time. I think it is important to note that at the Wednesday Power Board meeting, Mayor suggested, and it was very well received, that in approximately 6 weeks, when this initial valuation is completed, we would have another joint MED Board City Council meeting to examine and look at this initial valuation and then determine if there's need for additional work or if we've done enough and can make judgments from that point.
There are going to be a number of deal points related to such a transaction that have yet to be answered. I think the thought was, before we spend a lot of time and money dealing with those, let's come up with a range of price to see if there's even interest. The city may say, we're no longer interested, and all that work would not be necessary. Middle Tennessee Electric could do likewise and say, that range is not going to work for us. There is no deal. And so that's why those questions have been kind of slow walked, because this is really a threshold go or no go. And even if the range is acceptable, there's still another 6-week study where GAI would come in and look at the equipment in specific detail, look at the office equipment in specific detail, and all the sort of tangible assets to come up with a hard number that would yet again be another point of decision. If we see a number in a range that looks like there still may be mutual interest, we'll need to continue to pick up some of those deal point issues that are both legal issues as well as what we would call the operational or employee issues that are very critical and very important to a deal that could also kill a deal. But we put those aside until we could figure out the number first.
And the memorandum of understanding that we entered into with Middle Tennessee Electric, it's no recourse from either party, right? If we decide to proceed or not proceed or whatever, either party can back out of the deal.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And just kind of give you guys one last little point that, however many months ago it was that we set up this committee, and that we all decided that we would have this committee to do the valuation. We had two people who submitted their proposals to us. The GAI, I think the major factor was that they were going to be able to provide us a certified appraisal, whereas the other one was not able to certify it from an appraisal standpoint. So that was a really big factor in the committee to choose this GAI over Burns at this stage, and so that we all know that it's,
So GAI was not the low necessarily as far as we
didn't base it on a price.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
The subcontractor that GAI is proposing to use is one of only 19 individuals in the United States that hold a special designation certifying them to appraise electric utilities. It's a very qualified individual, has performed a lot of these types of evaluations.
So what we're doing tonight is, would we to make a motion to approve the...
Approve the contract with GAI.
So the purchasing manager can, okay. So moved.
I'm going to second the motion, but I'll do so by adding that I think if someone were to come by and say, Eddie, I want to buy your house, both they and I would want to know, well, what is my house worth? Even if my house isn't for sale, I would still like to know what my house is worth. And that's kind of the way I'm looking at this, is because I'm interested in what the value of the electric company is, whether there's any intent or no intent whatsoever of selling it or making a deal on it. So I'll second the motion.
And Mr. Smotherman, I think you got a great point, because as a matter of fact, Mr. Lim, who's our head engineer, had even said that, every 4 to 5 years is a good time to look at evaluating any utility. And Mr. Crumley, I think something we found, MED's not ever been valued, has it?
To my knowledge, there's been nothing more than the book value established in the audit for MED. I'm not aware of any other valuation or appraisal of the assets of the utility. The process used by GAI Consulting will not only include the real assets of the utility, but they'll also look at the cash flow, the stream of cash coming away from MED, and use other tools to place a value on the utility.
I have a motion and a second.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Mr. Washington?
Abstain.
Vice Mayor Young?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. And I'm going to make sure that the council members stay updated. I have a folder that we received on, we get minutes from all of our boards and commissions. And so I've got the minutes from not the minutes, but paperwork that we got from the last Power Board meeting on salary studies and lots of important decisions that everyone's been talking about. I think, as a matter of fact, Mr. Sachs at our last board meeting I had asked a question based on previous discussion, and Mr. Sachs has announced he's going to retire in June of 2017. So there's a lot of important decisions that are going to have to be made at the power company, and I think it's good for the council to be updated and know exactly what's going on with the city's utility. So I'll get all that. Ms. Kent, Ms. Tigg will be sending that to you. Any other business from staff or city council?
Yes, Mayor. I saw on the table before you is a memo from me regarding the taxation of non-cash benefits and the effective date of that change. Back in October, council approved a change in the way non-cash benefits to employees are taxed. The go-live date for that change was to be in, I guess, 1st October and then November, and was to be at the time of the Kronos timekeeping system going into effect. As we've continued to work with Kronos, the go-live date for Kronos has now been moved to February 4th. Earlier on your consent agenda, you approved the change of some other provisions, parts of payroll-related matters, to also be moved to February 4th. And we're asking on this that you, the recommendation in this is not quite correct. This part was not included in the consent agenda, but we're asking you now in other business to approve delaying the effective date of the change in taxation of non-cash benefits.
So this will work just like it did last year, is the short story.
Move for approval.
Can I ask one question?
Absolutely.
Is this long enough to delay it? I mean, gets this covered where?
Yes, sir.
All right. Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Mr. Lyons, do you anticipate that we'll meet between now and Christmas?
Joking. Yes, sir. The question?
Do you anticipate that we'll be meeting between now and Christmas?
I'm not sure right now.
Okay.
It's possible we may need a special meeting on one item, but right now I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, we have all of our city lunches that'll be coming up for the Christmas, and if we don't meet, then we want to wish all the residents a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Make sure you come out and run the New Year's Day 5K out at Barfield. Any other comments?
Start practicing for the polar bear plunge.
Oh, that's right.
Practicing.
Angela, do we have a date for the polar bear plunge yet? Sorry? Do we have a date for the polar bear plunge yet?
Yeah, it's
There's no practicing when it's 30 degrees.
January 14th. Does that sound right?
What's the time on your 5K?
I've seen it, but
10 o'clock. The 5K's at 10.
January 9th.
January 9th. Polar bear plunge at Sportscom. New Year's Day 5K, January 1st, 10 o'clock, Barfield Crescent. You can still register for that. Ms. Wright, we did that for all of you people who'll be out late on New Year's Eve.
Collecting taxes.
That's right. That's
Due
right.
date of taxes is December 31st. I'd like to make that
Yeah.
promo, too.
All right. Yeah, we appreciate your payment. And also, the Christmas parade is this Saturday, and that's 2 o'clock.
Sunday.
Sunday, I'm sorry. This Sunday, 2 o'clock, WGNS sponsoring and broadcasting as always. So
Chief Christmas, the Grand Marshal.
that's right. Chief Christmas is the Grand Marshal of the parade this year. So we're excited and look forward to seeing everyone out. So with that, we'll wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Stand adjourned.